But here, just a small point. I really want to hear your thought about the question of the public. I mean, we will come back to this point later around your notion of biopolitics, from below. But here I'm thinking, what is the empirical shape of the public? I'm quite puzzled by a specific phenomenon. That is, now the public acquire its empirical or visible manifest through these large events. It is not through, I mean, we will think, in classical thinking of a parliamentary debate, a public space, newspaper or coffee house, or of course you have experts and etc. No, now when there is such a thing as if there is a public, I mean, the public has to be huge rally, huge election, very colorful festival. And so that became a particular way of mobilizing. I think that's related to your thinking as well, politics from below. But why other type of mobilization, form of mobilization, somehow seems to fade away, and that is, I think, is also true in the West. You have all this large scale protests. I mean, for all kinds of reasons, they're fully legitimate and they should protest. But then it seems that people do not have other means to reorganize society, to impact the politics, except from having a march on the street and shouting slogans. I mean, do you have any thought? I mean, why the whole political life somehow become carnivalized? Therefore, it will lead to a condition that ideologically become very polarized, right? And there's no real debate. It's basically it's you or this, your side or my side, right? It's not a very healthy condition. And I think in India, they become politically so divided, in my observations, somehow related to this mode of mobilization. Is this something new, or did I get it wrong?
When I use the word a new kind of public power, as I said, that I was thinking of the long tradition in not only Republican thought, and therefore the question of Machiavelli, but also in our own thinking. But as I referred to Marx, that when Marx conceptualized the power of the commune in his lectures on civil war in France, he was precisely saying, look, there is a new kind of power, a power that emerges in Paris, as opposed to the power in Versailles, the power of the monarchists, the reactionaries, etc., royalists. And therefore, two dimensions to the question that you pose. And I think on both the answers, you will notice, and therefore I am, being open from the word go, that both these actually move away from conventional thinking and take us to unanticipated directions. One is that we have to probably put the Habermasian ghost, idea to grave. This idea of the public, modeled, oriented, reoriented by a sphere that is made and remade by certain apparatuses. So call it media, call it cafe, call it political party, etc., etc. One, and which therefore, in a way, positions itself in the mainstream of liberal political thinking. And therefore, you find that Republican thinking in its most trenchant form and liberal political thinking, they are not same. Even though liberal political thinking would like to say that we are Republicans and from Republicanism, liberalism grows. But it's only half true. That story is not full. You can't say one of the greatest Republicans, let us say Robespierre, was a liberal. No. So Republican thinking at least in the beginning, and at certain points of insubordination, mutiny, popular unrest, what you say, event, moments of crisis, Republican thinking has, the hallmark of Republican thinking has been to reconceptualize the idea of the public. On the other hand, Habermas and all of them are with great thinkers they are, but I think, in other words, what I'm telling is that we have to put to rest. That's a very Kantian kind of legacy that we have. Kant thought that citizenship was an institution unique to Europe because Indians didn't have the cities in the way Kant had conceptualized. So we couldn't have citizens. The other thing is that if you think of India, and there you are right, that actually the public is created continuously by great events like the one that we are passing through. There is no pre-given public. There is, but I'm saying, in order to explain myself very clearly and think along, as I said, unanticipated lines, it is these events like war, famines, certain biological crisis like the COVID crisis, which creates politics of different type. They actually produce a public which is not accustomed or which has not grown out of the great parliamentary rules, the modes of legislation, the modes of your election, organizing yourself in a party, guiding your life according to government codes and regulations. No. These are at one go, these are certainly proof they are very hollow. They mean very little. At times they mean nothing. And people take to streets, as migrant took to streets. People respond in 1,001 ways. And therefore, to your other linked question, which is this, the first question is, what is this idea of the public? Therefore, I'm trying to argue out. The other is that this public, as I indicated, has both the horizontal assembly and the vertical assembly. So if you think in terms of COVID, the medical workers, the scientific community, the caregiving community, the slum dwellers, I wrote in my book in great details, the supply chain workers who during the lockdown period will satisfy you with all your daily requirements, to employees and workers, let us say, in waste disposal industry, which becomes very important. All of them are there and all of them are fighting COVID in their own way. And they are fighters in the same war, but the assembly, as I said, the assembly of the thing, if you call it an assemblage, this is based on horizontal mobilization. So the relation between, let us say, an informal caregiver or a housemaid who has to go or visit the houses where he or she works during the pandemic, or the doctor who works, the person who works in the factory that is producing the ventilators, those who are on sea, those who can't dock even during the lockdown period. Think of the ship that was docked outside, near Tokyo, I remember, not in Tokyo, in Japan, another city, for almost 2 months or 3 months during the lockdown. And daily we were hearing reports of how COVID is taking away life after life, but the government doesn't allow them to dock and to come out. So that is one kind of mobilization. But this public would mean that in order to enrich and in order to bring this horizontal mobilization to play and to bring out its strength that it covers the breadth of the society in the time of an emergency, you need that power also, which commands the loyalty and the attention, and which has commanded the trust of the. Trust is very important. Without trust, people will not listen to you. Without trust, it is impossible. See, large-scale modification of human behavior is not a matter of a day. When you ask people, do not go out without mask, you may say a million times, but you are changing the biological habit of a society. You can't do it overnight. So when you have to put certain punitive measures, certain disciplinary measures, you have to have trust. It's like trusting your doctor. It's like that this power, that it is there for our benefit. It is saving us. And it must appear as saving the people. So the combination of a vertical mobilization of power and a horizontal mobilization of power is essential. And if you think in terms of a war, when a war general has, an army which fights positional battles, at the same time has a command of a huge guerrilla army, which are operating in partially free manner. They are partisan forces. Partially, they have been left free. That's why they are guerrilla. They have so much independence, autonomy. At the same time, they are bound to a bigger war plan. So if it is a war on COVID, then you have to have a much more reconceptualized notion of social power that will, see the society through.
That's wonderful. I mean, it reminded me an old saying in Chinese, saying that the soldiers in the battlefield can implement the command from the superiors selectively. The soldiers are allowed for certain freedom because they are in the battlefield. This does not mean the soldiers are disloyal to the command. On the contrary, it's because the soldier knows the situation better, right? They have spontaneity and this horizontal mobilization around the soldier themselves. So that's the wonderful roundabout. I suppose what I was thinking, this kind of carnivalized politics, probably they lack both horizontal and vertical mobilization. Is just all very symbolic and driven by sometimes empty ideologies.